scripted. I wanna equip you and use against my enemies, yeah. You see, you wanted to save you and then learn how to raise you, but I forget you from the wilderness.
The Yeti is coming. I don't like bumming. The Yeti is coming. Eamon does like bumming. Yeah. That's yours.
What? That's the first verse, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the second verse is pansexual Yeti, are you there, Yeti? Oh, you are my best bro, but I'm not in love with you.
The best part about that was, right, I didn't have any lyrics prepared because we're totally not recording this one after the first one. So I was supposed to say the Yeti is coming, Eamon likes bombing, but I said the Yeti is coming, and then I went to I, and I was like, I can't say I like bombing, so I had to think on the. It was a disaster there. It was
you got it's hard thinking on your toes isn't so easy, is it?
No,
you gotta do that improv shit. You're like bouncing around like a little Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah, well, that's it exactly. Yeah. What's up, everyone? Rob here with Monster Fuzz, and with me is.
Eamon. I thought it was like I was Monster Fuzz. Yeah, that's right, bitches. He's with Monster Fuzz. That's me.
Yeah, the Monster Fuzz. Eamon is actually just called Monster Fuzz. My name is Monster Munch.
You're Monster Fuzz, and I'm Podcast. Together we are.
Your name is Podcast, but what's up, everyone? Thanks for all the stuff. Follow us at Monster Fuzz Podcast and all that. And today we are talking about one of the classic cryptids, one of the mainstays of cryptozoology. One of my personal favorites, I suppose. One of my personal favorites because I think there was Yetis in Tomb Raider 2, I want to say. I think so, yeah. Yeah, so shouts out, this is the Yeti episode titled Are We There Yeti by Eamon, which is a great title. Can you remember the first time that you heard of a Yeti, Eamon, and what it was? Where was it? What was your introduction to a Yeti? I can't really remember, but definitely Tomb Raider, probably.
I do remember. It's funnily enough, actually, I was up in your cousin's house and she was playing Tomb Raider there. Of course, and this is maybe, I don't know, this time last year. Yeah. But she was blowing all the Yetis up with like a rocket launcher or something. Mm-hmm. My first encounter with the Yeti is my grandmother came to stay with us when we were a kid, and she died, unfortunately. So that was the shout back to that last thing. I got on my roast and talked all about my dead relatives a couple episodes ago. Anyway, no, my grandma stayed with us for a while when I was really small, and I used to get this book from the library, and it was like a yellow book just called Monsters.
Right.
And it had like Loch Ness, it even had Beowulf, it had all these different monsters in it. And I'm nearly certain the Yeti was there. So it had like the Patterson Gimlin, like a still of that footage of Bigfoot. Right. And then later on it like showed the Yeti and some like big sharks, and there was loads of stuff in it. It was deadly. It was probably the best book I've ever read. But it was it
was all downhill from there. That was it.
Yeah, like after that I read like just like everything you read after that is like, well, what's the point in this? Like, where's the Bigfoot? Where's those the encounters with like goblins?
Talking about picture books when you're young, fuck me, man. I mean, that shit was flames. If you like, give me them Aesop's Fables. Like, I still remember the artwork. I still remember how cool they were. Way more than anything else on it. Like dinosaur books, all that stuff. At that age, that's the shit, really. And you read them. Those books are probably the books you read the most ever. You know, you've probably read those books 10, 15 times. You know.
Yeah, I think the really cool thing about it is you're seeing these creatures that are really sort of interesting to look at anyway. You know, like even as a grown man, like if I ever see like a creature feature, I watched some YouTube video about he did a breakdown of the Spider movie from the first one, I think called Tarantula in the 1950s, when it was that sci-fi radioactive, the atom bomb causing, you know, like the Godzilla and stuff like that. And he went from that into arachnophobia, into like the giant spiders of eight-legged freaks. And he was just talking about how they kind of kept the comedy with, I think there was another one called Kingdom of the Tarantula or something like that. But just, I love all that creature stuff. Like Jaws is probably my favorite movie. Jurassic Park's way up there. Like anything with good characters and monsters in it, I'm sold, you know.
I was like reading those books over and over again. Like at the time I was quite deep into books and stuff like that, and then I was really into all that stuff at that age, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as well, sorry, I was taking a swig of my tea. I'm drinking miso soup like a gentleman.
This fucking weeb. So for everyone listening, this weeb.
I'm not a weeb. There is seaweed. There is seaweed in it, though. There's seaweed in it. Like, I tell you, man, don't sleep on seaweed. Seaweed is delicious. It tastes salty, like bacon. Very low in calories, like air, and also full of omega-3. So take that and rewind it back.
Eamon is sitting there with Hihachi's wooden shoes on and a big pair of baggy X-Works jeans. And a samurai sword on his back, drinking miso soup as we try and fucking record.
I do actually have behind me. The reason the audio is going weird is because I'm looking behind me. I've got Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. I have Ryu from Street Fighter and Chun-Li from Street Fighter. I have a couple of Batmen up there. The Ryu toy is really cool. Oh yeah, and I have this other. Yeah, I have a Street Fighter, a giant Street Fighter encyclopedia there on my bookshelf.
To your credit, though, you were a weeb before being a weeb was a thing. So you're like the grandfather.
Yeah, I was a loser way before it was cool.
No, I'm not saying you're a loser.
Like
no. Eamon start talking in Japanese there. I'm you made weeb cool. Like you were never a nerd, so like that's, you know, I can say that to your testament. I can give you a compliment for once. You were able
to appreciate that.
Yeah,
rare.
You were able to make that work for you though. You were like the king of the weebs.
Didn't get laid till I was like 32.
Hideo Kojima.
I will be buying Ghost of Tsushima.
Of course,
Hideo Kojima and the Ghost of Tsushima. That should be what that game is called, even if it has nothing to do with Hideo Kojima. And I'm going to be writing a strongly worded letter to Sucker Punch, who are producing it.
Eamon's favourite things are Hiroshima, Kojima, and Tsushima in that order.
Sushimi, and you've forgotten about Nagasaki, which I was also fond of.
I was just going on the things that rhyme.
No, you did good. To be fair, I love sushi. It's probably my favorite food in the world. It is, like, I love sushi. I think Street Fighter is one of the best games ever made. My favorite game of the last generation was Deadly Premonition, which more Japanese game you'd be hard pressed.
Well, Japanese, but more sort of on the Twin Peaks type of thing. It was definitely like they tried to lift Twin Peaks big time, you know.
Yeah, it's like and at the moment I'm watching a TV show called Midnight Diner, where a fella opens a sushi restaurant from 12 at night to 7 in the morning. And it's just about the weird characters that come in and talk. Because I was just maybe in my last life I was a Japanese dude. I don't know. I like their shit. I like what they do.
Yeah, you must be, man. Yeah, no, look, you know, you do you. You want the bomb Pearl Harbor, by all means. You know, you work away there.
That's not going to be popular when we break Asia. That's gonna come back to haunt you when this podcast breaks Asia. I'm telling you now.
Beatlemania sweeps across Asia. Me and Eamon getting off planes in Japan, waving at everyone, high-fiving people. Eamon signing fucking Street Fighter 4 DVD cases and everything.
I'm telling you, hair on me like so hot. It's 3 feet of hair, so I'm 9 foot tall. You're
doing miso soup ads and all that, you know, on telly where they're all like mental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taicho, boy.
yeah, literally, yeah. I think this is the farthest off the rails we've ever gone. We're like literally in a different country, and not only are we in a different country, but we're living a life in the country and immersing ourselves in the culture. It's like, you ever heard them stories of people
That's
that have
what I've done with
dreams?
Japanese culture for years.
Yeah, did you ever hear about them lads that take like
ones?
it's either drugs or dreams? I can't remember. It's one of the two. Same thing. But they'd get lost, like, and basically live another life. Oh, Salvia, I think it is. Where, like, I've done Salvia. I've never had this experience, but there's some guys, like, you read accounts of them online, and that, maybe at some point in the future that might be subject matter to cover. But they live entirely different lives in this trip, and not only that, but it feels like the time elapses for them, you know? Crazy.
Didn't
shit.
Ari Shafir say he did lived like a 3-month live and made all these friends and all that sort of stuff, but it was like 15 minutes in people time.
Yeah, he was one of them, and one of the more famous ones that I'm talking about I read online, and it was like, it really did seem like that we were in the Matrix after I read it. But anyway, let's get back to fucking Nepal or Tibet or wherever the fuck, which is actually fairly close to Japan, I suppose. So we're not actually making that much of a journey. So what are you,
Well,
Yeti?
I bet the Yeti would love nigiri sushi. I bet he'd love some nigiri sushi.
He probably would.
Down into my belly.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, but like, do you want to tell people about what the Yeti is?
I'll tell people what the Yeti is. So, the Yeti, more commonly known, arguably, as the abominable snowman, is a folkloric ape-like creature taller than an average human.
Right.
That's said to inhabit the Himalayan mountains. The names Yeti and Mite are commonly used by the people indigenous to the region, and it's part of their history and mythology.
You even said that.
So,
you said that
here's
Mite with that like inflection there. I see what you did there.
Mite. It's because I've watched so much Japanese shit that it's like I picked it up. You know, I didn't mean to. Just like it's in my heart and my soul. You know. Neon Genesis Evangelion, great show. Anyway, so the Yeti is 8 feet tall, covered in hair, and sort of strangely human-like. It draws parallels with Bigfoot in its appearance, and it's said to have fur that is brown, red, or even white. I suppose the red Yeti is more Bigfootish, like the orangutan kind of.
Yeah, Gigantopithecus type of buzz, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's worth noting that in a lot of indigenous cultures, they don't really differentiate from the natural world and the supernatural world. So some researchers have suggested that for this reason, Yeti is reported as being a flesh and blood creature, but it's actually folklore that's kind of being reported as nature. And I think we talked about this in the very first episode, Mekele and Bebe, that they don't differentiate between myth and reality, I suppose.
Yeah, so I suppose, yeah. I mean, you're dealing with cultures that, especially at the time anyway, at least with Mekele and Bembe and all that like you're dealing with cultures that not only don't really have interaction with the outside world, but like also just believe what they're told. I mean, why wouldn't they? And unfortunately, that's why a lot of those tribes are exploited, like where lads will go into the Amazon and they'll tell this tribe that they'll give them a Nokia 3210 if they come out, and then when they come out, they fucking bulldoze their house and shit, like, and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
I'd say they're delighted with that Nokia 3310, though. It's a good phone.
They're playing Snake and their house is fucking part of
Man, can you imagine if you had never played a video game in your life and someone gave you a phone that you could play Snake on? I'd be like, take the house. No. I don't give a shit. No, I'd be like, take that house.
So disappointed. Like, if someone gave you Snake and they were bulldozing your house, like, you'd be like, what the fuck is this
man.
shit?
I'd be like, I'll get a new house, but where am I going to get a new Snake? That's what I'd be thinking.
Yeah, but with indigenous people as well, I wonder, like, do they look at like their home area as like permanent, or is it like sort of, we can move? Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, those boys are fairly good at making houses.
Yeah,
that's
what
it's
I
like
mean,
you and me, or like.
I'm not trying to advocate burning down the Amazon, by the way. I'm just trying to. I'm more concerned about our little Amazonian friends, that if they're, if they are displaced, is it easy for them to start up again, or are they sort of goosed?
Did you ever see them two fellas on YouTube that make underwater pools in like
Japan?
No, this isn't Japan. This is surprisingly not Japan. There's two like indigenous guys that basically just go out and they're in the little like the reed underwear and all that, and they just make like deadly looking underground pools and houses and stuff.
Oh yes. I've seen that dude. Yeah. I've seen them. Yeah.
Usually see it when it's like 2 a.m. and you should have gone to bed hours ago, but here you are looking at these lads. Thinking about how could you do it?
It takes them lads months though. That's like deceptive. They do a lot of editing and all that shit, and they have like black holes and all that to do, be connected up to fucking rivers and all. Never mind them.
The boys, yeah.
The boys have got all sorts. They probably have the diggers and all that off camera anyway, so they're probably taking the fucking piss. Like they're probably piss takers. I'd say. God. Yeah, there is plenty of sightings and some video of Yetis. There's been plenty of sightings throughout history aside from Sasquatch or Bigfoot. In the Amazon, a giant ape-like creature called the Mono Grande has been reported to haunt the far reaches of the rainforest. In Siberia, nomadic herders tell tales of the Almos, which leaves behind only huge footprints. So, yeah, I mean, Yeti has been happening. He's been out here, right?
Yeah, that's what they're saying. So I think every culture has its own. I think a good way of thinking about it is we know there were wild men, right? We know there were wild men. We know there were Neanderthal. We know there was that in between. We know there was
Gigantopithecus, and we know that there was giant fucking sloths. We know all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and Gigantopithecus is a really Gigantopithecus, if it managed to survive some way, that explains the Yeti and Bigfoot and these guys. You're talking about the Almos, the Mono Grande, like they're all, if that did survive some way, like that explains everything basically.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
Yeah, and also even the giant sloths. I mean, if you've seen a giant sloth walking upright or something in the woods, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's like a Yeti, or like, because they're huge, like, so you'd be fairly spooked. But the Book of Genesis references the Nephilim, which are giants covered in hair that were born of the union between angels and the daughters of men. There were giants on the earth in those days, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and bore children to them. Genesis 6:2. The Book of Genesis.
I didn't check if that's like, because you know, giants on the earth in those days. When the sons of God came into the daughters of men, I was like, Jesus Christ, is that what they were calling it back then? Like, it's almost as if Genesis should have said, when the sons of God bust nuts all up in those daughters of men.
Doesn't it? It does actually sound like that.
Could have been paraphrased, yeah.
Yeah. The Book of Genesis also describes another hairy man, Esau, the first son of the patriarch Isaac.
Yeah.
The Babylonians.
Esau, yeah.
Yeah, the Babylonians have the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which the hero Gilgamesh is called on to fight the primitive wild man Enkidu. Nephilim will be revisiting Nephilim, and those are in an Alien Skull episode that I'm sort of messing around with at the minute, and that will be done at some point or another. So I do want to do an episode on Nephilim, so it is an interesting little topic, that whole thing. Do you want to talk about the first mention of the abominable snowman and some of the etymology behind it?
Yeah, so the name Abominable Snowman was coined in 1921. The same year, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Bury led the 1921 British Mount Everest reconnaissance expedition, which he chronicled Mount Everest, the Reconnaissance, which he chronicled in Mount Everest, the Reconnaissance in 1921. So a book that he wrote. In the book, Howard Bury includes an account of crossing the Lac La at 21,000 feet, where he found footprints that he believed were probably caused by a large loping grey wolf, which in the soft snow formed double tracks rather than those of a barefooted man.
Rather like those of a barefooted man.
Yeah, sorry, rather like those. So it's like the paw print, the front paw, and then the back paw compounding above it, so creates it bigger, yeah. He adds that his Sherpa guides at once volunteered that the tracks must be that of the wild man of the snows, to which they gave the name Meto Kangmi. So Meto translates as man bear and Kangmi translates as snowman. And Man Bear Snowman is a way better name for the Yeti, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, Man Bear, again, we're going back to the Mega Slot. He kind of looks like a bear man thing. They're strange. It's strange that there is this fusion between man and bear, as there is wolf and man. I wonder, is it a cultural thing where the bear was the big dog of the area, so rather than being a werewolf, you were a man bear?
Potentially. I mean, humans have always had that kind of recognition with animals. And again, is it the animal inside us that we can kind of see, the wild or the savage personality traits that exist inside us. And then we kind of put them against, because the wolf is a very good predator, as is the bear, and they don't really have many predators. They don't have many predators to go after them. I think maybe the bear and the wolves will tussle every now and then, but that's about it. But to go on with this, I suppose confusion exists between Howard Bury's recitation of the term metacagmi and the term used in Bill Tillman's book Mount Everest, which came out in 1938, where Tillman had used the words mech, which does not exist in the Tibetan language, and kangmi when relating the coining of the term abominable snowman. So the further evidence of mech being a misnomer is provided by the Tibetan Language Authority, Professor David Snellgrove, from the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. It's around 1956. So he dismissed the word mech as impossible because the consonants TCH can't be conjoined in the Tibetan language. Right. So the documentation suggests that the term mech kangmi is derived from one source, and has been suggested that mech is simply a misspelling of meto. Right. So there was a kind of a thing between meto and mech, and it looks like maybe the way that the natives described it to Howard Bury was, that's how he wrote it, but it wouldn't be, the way it's spoken, not written, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, come on, like, it's an English dude in fucking 1921 talking to Tibetans.
Exactly.
He's not going to be fucking transcribing it like properly, is he?
Yeah, exactly. The use of the term abominable snowman began when Henry Newman, a longtime contributor to the Statesman in Calcutta, who wrote under the pen name of Kim, interviewed the porters of the East Reconnaissance Expedition on their return to Darjeeling. Newman mistranslated the word meta as filthy, substituting the term abominable, perhaps out of an artistic license, I suppose, to just sort of put his own stamp on it. And then, as the author Bill Tillman recounts, Newman wrote long after in a letter to the Times, the whole story seemed such a joyous creation, I sent it to one or two newspapers. So he basically got these published, and his mispronunciation of meta meaning filthy and then abominable. So, as we said, it's bear man, bear, snowman. But because of that mispronunciation between meta and mech, he got the filthy. So that's why he took a bit of artistic license, and you're left with abominable snowman. So kind of an interesting way that the actual name came,
Yeah, for sure. We should set up a counter on how many times we cock up abominable snowman, the pronunciation, because it is an absolute
I can't say it like.
No, it's an absolute bitch to say. And in this episode, I guarantee you, we are going to absolutely make a hams of it quite a few times. But in the pre-19th century, according to H. Seeger, the Yeti was a part of the pre-Buddhist beliefs of several Himalayan people. He was told that the Lepcha people worshipped a glacier being as a god of the hunt. Again, we go back to that wolf hunt becoming the wolf man. And that being the men that hunted were basically transcended into the wolf. That was their role. That they were now the hunter. They hunted and took meat. So they were a glacier being was the god. I'm trying to figure out why it would be a glacier being, but he also reported that followers of the Bon religion once believed the blood of the Mir god or wild man had use in certain mystical ceremonies. I think that the meat was said to cure mental anguish. The being was depicted as an ape-like creature who carries a large stone as a weapon and makes a whistling swoosh sound. So does he make a whistling swoosh sound when he's swinging his club, or does he just go when he's going
I think he's just like, yeah. I don't know if he does the last bit, but he definitely kind of goes, you know, stuff like that. But it is funny again that you're talking about these wild men that appear in every folklore tradition across. There's even really interesting ones, and we'll try to get into them later on. Maybe a giant. I'd say if we do a Bigfoot episode, we'll have to do
we're
several
absolutely
parts, you know?
doing a Bigfoot episode, and it is absolutely going to be several parts, yeah, for sure.
But there's some great ones with those. There's like a Bigfoot creature. I can't remember where it was, maybe Massachusetts, but he's said to carry a lantern. So he's this giant ape man that carries a lantern through the forest. So there's some really cool folklore stories, I suppose. And then there's sightings of these guys as well. So the American tradition of, I suppose, their Yeti, if you like. And I know it's not a snowman, the color is different, but it's effectively the same kind of animal. They have some really interesting stories about folklore stories about those guys.
Well, at the very least, it's interesting how if you are in North America, a bear is brown or black, and if you're in a frozen area, the bears are white. Same as like any other type of animal really kind of adopts that coat. So at the very least, the idea of these creatures having different colours and different continents makes sense, really. So that's at least one thing that kind of sounds plausible, right?
Totally, yeah. Well, I thought you were going to go down the other road there, which nearly broke my heart. You were like, well, bears in America are like black and brown, and Bigfoot's usually black or brown, and bears in these glacier areas are usually white, and the Yeti is white. So do you think it's just people seeing bears?
That's
well, I was glad you didn't say that. No, I've said it, so I think we're all sort of upset.
No, I did think that when I was spitballing that idea in my head, but I mean, of course, there is definitely evidence to suggest that creatures like this are bears, and we will be talking about that. So
yeah,
but I think there's more to it than that. So do you want to tell people about the 19th century and some of the like Yeti encounters around that time?
Yeah, so this is just kind of going up a lot of the different ways people would have reported the Yeti encounters. So pre-19th century is obviously the Buddhists. The 19th century, in 1832, James Princeps, Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, which is published by B.H. Hodgson's account. It published B.H. Hodgson's account of his experience in northern Nepal. So his local guide spotted a tall bipedal creature covered with long dark hair. Okay, that's good. Dark hair, not white hair. Okay. Good stuff. That's great. And the creature seemed to flee in fear. Now, Hodgson concludes that it was an orangutan, which is possible. An orangutan has like that ginger kind of hair to it. An early record of reported footprints appeared in 1899 in Lawrence Waddell's Among the Himalayas. Waddell reported his guide's description of a large ape-like creature that left the prints, which Waddell had thought were made by a bear. But then he heard the stories of this bipedal ape-like creature. He did write that none, however, of the many Tibetans I have interrogated on this subject could ever give me an authentic case. On the most superficial investigation, it always resolved into something that somebody heard tell of, which again is a very folklore, is an oral tradition. So maybe that's where that's coming from. And I think we spoke about it before. Tales of the wild man, which did exist, passed down and passed down and passed down and passed down. Is this what it culminates in?
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, there was a point I was going to make there that I think it's kind of after escaping me now, but it's just hard to say really, because that was the point I was going to make. Like, at the time that we're talking about here, there was animals that were extinct after this point. So, like, you know, the Thylacine and all that was still actually alive and around at this time. So that's just to give you a bit of context, I suppose, that at least it's possible that there were some type of creature that became extinct around that time. So it is possible that even within 100 years of this James Prinsep guy who was like tracking and B.H. Hodgson those guys, it's possible that they heard tales from people whose granddads actually seen something that maybe we don't know about, because a lot of stuff does get lost in the snow, right? And a lot of stuff does turn up in the snow. Over, like, you know, you see all those frozen, like Otzi the Iceman is a famous example. And then there's, you know, those wolf dogs that thaw out. There's mammoths that thaw out. There's a lot of stuff that actually gets frozen. So who knows, you know, maybe there was something that had a very limited population in the Himalayas, which is a very rugged, wild area, that basically, yeah, they did wander around from mountain to mountain, and they were sort of nomadic, or maybe at the very least they were some type of Neanderthal or something like that. And yeah, they basically became extinct 200 to 300 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it's all possible, yeah. But yeah, all possible.
Yeah, so in the 20th century, in 1925, N.A. Tombazzi, who was a photographer and member of the Royal Geographical Society, wrote of his sighting, Unquestionably, the figure in outline was exactly like a human being, walking upright and stopping occasionally to pull at some dwarf rhododendron bushes. It showed up dark against the snow, and as far as I could make out, wore no clothes. About 2 hours later, Tombazzi and his companions descended the mountain and saw the creature's prints, described as similar in shape to those of a man, but only 6 to 7 inches long by 4 inches wide. So interesting that you know, 6 to 7 inches long is a very small foot. Like, you're actually talking about the size of a female adult, you know?
Yeah. I mean, could it have been a youngling maybe, or something like that, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a small print, you know, because I think there is probably some people out there who don't realize that your shoe size is just inches. So if you're a size 6, you're 6 inches. So that's like, so it's quite a small foot. That is the Yeti. Maybe the Yeti just has small limbs, you know.
Yeah.
But
small feet, big heart.
But Peter Barton reported finding a Yeti footprint in 1948 in northern Sikkim, India, near the Zimu Glacier, while on holiday from a Royal Air Force assignment in India. So, you know, we're getting all these sightings coming in. Like, it's not as if it's a random thing with only a few ones. In 1977, the Chinese government themselves sent more than 100 investigators into Himalayan regions, and they found nothing. In 1988, the Chinese government allowed a Western expedition into the area, but they too were unable to find anything. So, I mean, you know, it's pretty big for the Chinese government to let people in behind the curtain to take a look for a Yeti, right?
Oh, yeah. Really strange that they would. So, I mean, it might tell you that either they were confident that it could be found, because even if the Westerners found the Yeti, it's still China's Yeti. You know what I mean? It's not like they're going to take it back home on a plane. So potentially they were just trying to let them use their resources to get it. But I mean, I imagine they either, one of two things: they were either confident that something could be found and they could capitalize, or they were confident that nothing would be found. But in that case, why bother letting why bother letting a Western expedition in? You know, they're just, I mean, China aren't really known for their hospitality to foreigners, you know?
No, not really, no. Maybe back
I mean, like, in terms of, well, I just mean, like, if you have, you know, like, obviously people go over there and study acupuncture and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, they're very locked down and
well, obviously, it's a communist country. Let's be honest about it. Like, this what it is, and that means I'm never getting into China now, so I'll just have to enjoy that. So actually, here's a little one, Eamon, that ties in with us. And do you know why Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay tie in with us?
Was Edmund Hillary from the Macaulay and Bebe episode?
No,
or am I getting confused?
No, you're getting confused. He might have been. He could have been in one of our episodes before, but he was in. Do you remember when we went to climb Snowdonia? When we were doing Brokeback Mountain.
Oh, yes. Yes.
The hotel, they had all of his equipment and all that. He practiced on Snowdon a few times. So
in the Penny Geared, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Penny Geared. That's the one. Some of that shit was his equipment. So that's a little tie-in there that we've actually experienced. And by the way,
written in the stars.
Yeah, if anyone listening is in, I suppose, Europe or further afield, Snowdonia is a really nice place to check out. It's a place that I've been many times, and there's a really nice little hotel there called the Penny Guard, which is, or Penna Guard, I suppose, is in Welsh. I think the Y is pronounced like a U, I think. So Penna Guard, I think, would be the correct way to say it. But it's a fantastic little hotel, and it also has all this memorabilia of people who used to use Snowdon as like a practice climb in snowy conditions. They'd, use their crampons and their axes and all that. It was a way to practice back in the day. So yeah, it's a nice little area. So if you're ever there, do check it out. But those guys found what they described as Yeti footprints. In his first autobiography, Tenzing said that he believed the Yeti was a large ape. And although he had never seen it himself, his father had seen one twice. But in his second autobiography, he said he had become much more skeptical about its existence. It's possible, like, as well, that there would have been a bit of like, you wouldn't want to associate yourself with something like a Yeti, because they probably at this time, 1953, they probably started to become like this science fiction type of thing people were probably poking fun at. So I can imagine, regardless, Tenzing would want to distance himself because, well, I think he was were they the first up Everest? I don't know, but they were definitely some of the early Everest climbers. He was a New Zealand mountaineer, Hillary was. Yeah, so anyway, do you want to talk about the Daily Mail Yeti bit?
Yeah, so on the 19th of March 1954, the Daily Mail printed an article which described expedition teams obtaining hair specimens from what was alleged to be a Yeti scalp found in the Pangboche Monastery. The hairs were black to dark brown in color in dim light and fox red in sunlight. Did I say sunlight? I meant sunlight. The hair was analyzed by Professor Frederick Wood Jones, who is an expert in human and comparative anatomy. During the study, the hairs were bleached, cut into sections, and analyzed microscopically. The research consisted of taking micro photographs of the hairs and comparing them with hairs from known animals such as bears and orangutans. Jones concluded that the hairs were not actually from a scalp. He contended that while some animals do have a ridge of hair extending from the plate of the back, no animals have a ridge, as in the Pangboche scalp, running from the base of the forehead across the pate and ending at the nape of the neck.
Right.
So Jones was basically unable to pinpoint exactly the animal from which the Pangboche hairs were taken. He was, however, convinced that the hairs were not of a bear or an anthropoid ape. He suggested that the hairs were from the shoulder of a coarse-haired, hoofed animal. So I guess you might be thinking some sort of mountain goat or something.
Yeah, probably, like, that would be most likely. There was probably a lot of goats around that area, so
yeah, that kind of adds up.
Yeah, Hillary was actually, just to go back to him, he was the first dude to reach the summit of Everest. And he climbed it, with Tenzing Norgay, and Norgay was his Sherpa. So it's just a little bit of info for you guys. And he only died in 2008. So, at the ripe old age, at the ripe old age of 88. So it's a shame he's not still alive. Maybe we could have prodded him about Yetis. Maybe we can set up a Ouija board for a ghost episode and see if we can get him in to have a chat with us. That'd be pretty cool. We'll dial him in and see how it gets on. Slavomir Ravich claimed in his book The Long Walk, published in 1956, that as he and some others were crossing the Himalayas in the winter of 1940, their path was blocked for hours by two bipedal animals that were doing seemingly nothing but shuffling around the snow.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like they're just like, after having too many fucking Guinnesses or something, and they're just like shuffling around looking for their taco chips or something. That's very unusual, isn't it?
I love a taco fry. It's a weird one, yeah. It's a weird one. It's a very weird one. But it's kind of a fun one. I like that idea of just two bipedal animals just kind of like just hanging out, just chilling out.
Yeah, just ignoring them and doing all that shit as well. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the Yeti shite?
Yeah, the Yeti shite's pretty good. So in 1959, supposed Yeti feces or shite were collected by one of Slick's expeditions. Fecal analysis found a parasite which could not be classified. The United States government thought that finding the Yeti was likely enough to create 3 rules for American expeditions searching for it. Obtain a Nepalese permit, do not harm the Yeti except in self-defense, and let the Nepalese government approve any news reporting on the animal's discovery. So this sounds like the start of an awesome movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Now, so basically they kind of said, yeah, that's grand. Now, in 1959, the actor James Stewart, while visiting India, reportedly smuggled the so-called Pangbosh hand by concealing it in his luggage when he flew from India to London. So the hand, this is kind of similar to, the monkey paw, but this was like a paw that was like, it was too big to be a monkey's paw. So it was like a Bigfoot paw, a Yeti paw, The hand was kept by monks who would not allow it to be taken away for religious reasons. However, Mr. James Stewart switched out some bones in the hand and smuggled it. So he basically just put something back for the lads, and he was like, oh yeah, look, there's your hand back, but he had the real hand. However, when it was scrutinized, it was found out to have been wired in a way that made it look like a Yeti hand, but in fact it was just, I think it was an actual monkey paw that they kind of basically manipulated to make it look really cool.
Yeah, it was maybe a bit of taxidermy or something, or whatever. Yeah, maybe exactly. they put a lot of sausages on a bit of wire, got a bit creative with it or something. And he
tasty as well.
Yeah, it was a fun way to play with your food, So that could have been what they were at. The monks, as we know, love sausages, so that's it's possible what they were at.
Big meat eaters.
Yeah. That would have been happening off a few fucking drover meat sausages.
Do you want to revisit Sir Edmund Hillary?
My old lad, Edmund Hillary. And just to say, actually, while we're on the topic of all this mountainous shit, Everest, he was the first dude to climb Everest, and he climbed it with gangster equipment that, nowadays it's bullshit. If you see the pictures of Everest, if you want to see bullshit, type Everest Summit 2019 and look at the queue to get on the fucking summit. There's a queue on top of Mount Everest to get to it, and it's like a fucking queue, a COVID queue to get into fucking Tesco's. It's ridiculous, man. There's people dying up on the mountain because they're waiting in the queue too long. It's nuts. It's absolutely mad.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So yeah, it's not really an achievement anymore because it's fucking monetized. Whatever, you could do it in some gangster way. I'm sure that would make it more of an achievement, but now it's not that impressive. It's what the fuck, man? Once you see a picture like that, it takes away the impressiveness for me, to be honest. It's right, this is just sad and really fucking dangerous now. It's not even an achievement. It's just well, if you have enough money, you can get to the top because you can buy enough Sherpas to carry the oxygen, and then you can just chill out the whole way up. But obviously, back then it's a different story altogether. But there's some cool Everest movies. Did you watch that one? What's the one with Jake Gyllenhaal? It was pretty good. It's the true story about was it called Everest? I think it was literally just called Everest.
I'm pretty sure that one's called Everest. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good flick, actually. So if people haven't watched that, it's a very good film, and it really highlights the brutality of the climb back then. In the 90s, it was still a very dangerous. Look, it's still dangerous, of course, but I'm not trivializing the danger of the mountain. I'm more trivializing the fact that people are just throwing money at it and being able to get up the fucking mountain. Especially, imagine that climbing Everest was your life dream, right? And ever since a young child, you've seen a fucking, you're like, Everest is it. And then you get there and there's 50 lads queuing to go up to the mountain. You know what I mean? And it's just, you're like, what? Or you spend your whole savings on it. It's nuts. It's nuts.
Would you even be bothered reaching the summit at that point? Do you know what I mean? Just be like, fuck this. I get it. I'm a few feet up.
Yeah, anyway, you're wearing a fucking jacket and a lot of goggles. Just take a picture of one of the lads up on the summit and be like, there I am. Get back down. Just be like, yeah, that was me up there. It was like when we were on the top of Snowdon and we were in the clouds and you could have taken a picture of anyone up at the summit of that and went, yeah, there you go, that was us,
Yeah.
So it's kind of...
That's true. I'd love to find those photos again, actually.
I should be able to track them down for you.
Woo.
But yeah, so that's just Everest is basically cack at the minute, so just so you know. But I just went completely on a rant there. In 1960, Edmund Hillary borrowed a supposed Yeti scalp from the Kumjung Monastery. Then himself and Kumjo Kumbi, the village headman, brought the scalp back to London, where a small sample was cut off for testing. The boys were really just going up and robbing fucking sausage hands and scalps and all sorts.
Burger scalps.
Burger scalps, yeah. It's like someone's foreskin stretched over a coconut. Marka Burns made a detailed examination of the sample of skin and hair from the margin of the alleged Yeti scalp and compared it with similar samples from the Serow, blue bear and black bear. Burns concluded the sample was probably made from the skin of an animal closely resembling the sampled specimen of Serow, but definitely not identical with it. Possibly a local variety or race of the same species, or a different but closely related species. So it looks like that was a bear, yeah?
Yeah, I think that was a bear.
Yeah, so that's kind of a bit shit. But what about the 21st century, Eamon? What's the correct there?
Well, the 21st century, so this is where stuff is a little bit more interesting, you know? So there's obviously stuff about footprints and blah, 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 but I tried to just pick out some of the stuff that's a bit more fun. So Brian Sykes, professor of human genetics in Oxford University, ran tests on a hare shot by a Himalayan bear hunter 40 years ago. So the hare was stuck into a bamboo shoot. The analysis of the DNA revealed a 100% match with an ancient polar bear that went extinct more than 40,000 years ago. The professor insists it's some kind of new bear species and perhaps a hybrid bear of sorts. And even if we think about hybrids, you know that when you breed a lion and a tiger, you get like a massive cat called a liger. So could it be could it be that these two types of bears breed and they make a bigger bear? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure, and it's also possible that those bears would be infertile as well, like kind of ligers. So it's possible that if they they'd have a very small population, and it was like maybe a fluke occurrence.
Yeah, potentially, which is pretty interesting. But his kind of, I suppose, hypothesis is that polar bears may have bred with brown bears tens of thousands of years ago, and that the species may have somehow survived. So that's a pretty interesting proposition, you know. The thing is that after this was released to the media,
right,
and people were quite excited about it, when it was further investigated, the samples were kind of thought to be from a brown bear or an Asiatic black bear.
So it was just basically more of the same, really.
Pretty much more the same. Now, here's the one. This was my favorite one.
Right.
There's a video from a couple of years ago. So a couple were climbing the Himalayan mountains. Now, the video is like 45 minutes of what you would expect from two people filming their like polar adventure. So it's just them, blah, 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 doing whatever. At the end of it, they're climbing a snowy slope.
Right.
When one of them turns around with the camera and looks back, and there's a large bear-like creature that can be seen near a tree.
Right.
The creature stands up on two legs and begins to walk away. Now, Jeff Meldrum, who's a university primatologist at Idaho University, explains that he believes that upon analyzing the video, he thinks a hoax is very unlikely because the movement of the animal looks very much like a gorilla. He actually calls them strikingly ape-like in character. Now, the people that put forward the video have refused to be identified. Other professionals believe that this is likely to be a hoax. It's kind of reminiscent of the Patterson-Gimli footage. You know, the most famous, I was about to say Godzilla, the most famous Bigfoot footage, you know. Now, I've seen this video. It's on a documentary, like a 45-minute, I think it was History Channel or Discovery Channel documentary.
Right.
It's, I would say, to the untrained eye, for me, totally untrained, no idea of anything, the Patterson-Gimli footage looks like a guy in a suit, right?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah,
I mean,
potentially.
you know, when you see a wild animal, they generally don't look like that. Even when you see a chimp walking, it doesn't
Yeah,
really look like
right.
that kind of Bigfoot, you know?
Yeah,
This one that I saw, now it's
yeah,
fairly grainy in that, but the movement does seem quite natural, you know?
yeah.
And
I
again,
think I've
that's me
seen
talking
this.
minimally like,
Like, I think I've seen this clip. I think I seen it at the time it came out. And I think I remember being weirded out by it, and I should have probably watched it before we did the show. I had completely forgotten about that clip. I think I remember at the time thinking it was real.
Yeah, like I've put a picture there below. So if you look
Yeah, yeah,
just below that
yeah.
part, it, I mean, even that picture is quite, you know, it again, look, it could be anything, but it doesn't look like a bear to me at all. The legs seem small,
No,
the arms
no,
feel very
no.
long. And it also doesn't, when you see it moving, like it looks quite, yeah, it looked quite real to me. But again, I have no idea, you know?
Yeah, and you were saying, yeah, that the size of the person roughly would have to be about 9 feet by the looks of it, from the scale of the picture and the scale of the video, which would mean it would be quite difficult to get someone to convincingly fill out a suit. Not that it's impossible to do that, but it would be hard to move organically in a suit like that if you're only 6 foot even. So
Exactly, yeah. And this looks very organic in its movement. So, you know, who knows?
um I think that I think the Yeti isn't that far out of like possibility, and yeah, it's an interesting looking picture, that one. I think, I don't know. I mean, one of the things for me is like, if someone is going to put this footage forward and they don't want to be named, like, why bother? Like, are they the type that would be happy putting out a hoax if they're not getting some credit for it? You know, like, I mean,
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
that's a possible question to raise. Is like, you know, maybe they're the type of people that would take satisfaction from just hoaxing people, and they just laugh and they don't need their name attached to it, and they get a bit of a chuckle out of it. Maybe they were just trying to see themselves, let's see if we can make a believable fake and see if people will believe it, whatever. That's all entirely possible. But also, you know, most of the time historically, people that do put forward that type of footage do want to make a name for themselves. So that would be, yeah, it would be in contrast with the evidence that we have there. So that's just something. It's a possible.
I mean,
thing
I
to
guess
think
if you
of.
think about it, if they're, yeah, I think if they're like, say they're going on holidays, they've shot 45 minutes of footage, so they're doing a trek, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they actually, let's say they did go on holidays and they were doing this,
Mm-hmm.
and they also decided, like, you know, if you're going to holidays in the middle of nowhere, like it's going to be fairly difficult to organize the logistics of getting a costume that looks that realistic. Do you know what I mean? To have one
Yeah.
of your mates just basically be there with you.
The flip side of it is as well, though, that people
So
maybe are too cowardly to stand behind the fact that it's a fake, just in case it does get found out. So that's the flip side of it, I suppose, to play devil's advocate, is also that, you know, they don't want to have any sort of possible scrutiny, because they might it might get exploited or whatever. It's also, I mean, to be fair, like, they would have a bit of fame even if they're anonymous, because like companies would be wanting to interview them, and documentary crews would be wanting to interview them and things like that. So you would imagine that they probably enjoy that side of it. That's just to play devil's advocate, so it doesn't seem like we're just trying to put it on one side too much. But why do these type of creatures seem to exist in so many old texts across the different geographies? That's an important thing that we've come up with like numerous times throughout our episodes. But Grendel, Gilgamesh of the Bible, wood cuttings, cave paintings, illustrations, they all show wild men. And why is that? Many people believe that this might be something akin to an echo from the past. Well, we've always talked about echoes from the past as something that we go back to, and if you listen to the Pleistocene episode, you would know a lot about that. When Homo erectus migrated out of Africa towards Southeast Asia, arriving around 800,000 years ago, that could be the echoes there. But Southeast Asia would have been populated by the gigantic ape named Gigantopithecus. there are fossil remains of Gigantopithecus, and they allude to the fact that it would have been the largest of the great apes, standing 10 feet tall. It was a massive ape. It's definitely worth, if you're interested, and chances are if you're listening to this podcast, you're interested. So search Gigantopithecus. Homo erectus and Gigantopithecus would have encountered one another. This primate was thought to be huge but mild-mannered, and by 300,000 years ago, the Gigantopithecus went extinct, which is not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, really. Some scholars believe that this extinction may have been accounted for by Homo erectus, and as we know from the Pleistocene episode, we were out killing and making everything extinct. So yeah, it's quite possible that we were killing them. And also, they reckon, I watched a really interesting thing about HPV, I think it is, like pretty much everyone has fucking HPV in some form or another. But they reckon the original HPV came from a man eating an ape. That's where it came from, like years and years and years.
Well, given our recent predicament that we found ourselves in, which potentially might have been from people eating bats. I see, like, when you think about diseases, like for a disease, just try, like, we're most like animals, of all the things that exist outside of us. So it makes sense that a disease could, in some cases, jump from an animal to a human. Well, not make sense, it does do that. So yeah, that totally could make sense about the HPV.
Yeah, it's so, some scholars believe that this extinction would be accounted for by Homo erectus, which again is totally credible and totally plausible. So are the writings of man fighting wild man and recollection of this from our earliest days that our ancestors hunt and wipe out the Yeti? So yeah, I mean, look, it's possible that even Homo erectus wouldn't have been as like flames as Homo sapien. Homo sapien is fuck up Homo erectus. So it's possible that even the Gigantopithecus or similar apes would have been a lot more of a threat to a Homo erectus. And also, again, like we were talking about with the Megatherium. Was it the Megatherium? Is that their name? The giant sloth? Megatherium. So it's possible, I suppose, that they hunted Gigantopithecus for meat, especially if Gigantopithecus was a very sort of docile orangutan-style animal. Maybe, a little army of Homo erectus went after Gigantopithecus, and they were getting smacked around the place trying to kill one. But so it's possible that they were trying to warn other tribes of these, Gigantopithecus and all these other apes, and telling these folkloric tales, I guess you could say. But it's time to go a little bit surreal, and it's also a thing that I was only reading about recently myself, and maybe in the future we'll do an episode on this, maybe we won't. It's kind of a little bit out of our wheelhouse, but if you add the Yeti into it, then it sort of is very closely related. So, Eamon, do you want to tell people about Dyatlov Pass?
Yeah. So the Dyatlov Pass incident, it's an event in which 9 Russian hikers died in the northern Ural Mountains between the 1st and 2nd of February in 1959. And the circumstances, basically, they have no idea what happened. It's a really, really, really interesting story.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
So, I think there's even a video game made about it called Kolat.
Really?
Which, I think so. I think it's meant to be terrible, but I've not played it, so I can't speak. But basically, the experienced trekking group, who are all from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, had established a camp on the slopes of Kolat Sayakal. So this is Russia. I'm having trouble saying the names.
Yeah.
In an area now named in honor of the group's leader, Igor Dyatlov. During the night, something caused them to tear away out of their tents and flee the campsite, all while inadequately dressed for the heavy snowfall and the sub-zero temperatures. After the group's bodies were discovered, an investigation by Soviet authorities determined that 6 had died from hypothermia, while the other 3 showed signs of physical trauma. One victim had a fractured skull, 2 others had major chest fractures, and the body of one of the group was missing both its eyes. One of the victims was missing a tongue. The investigation concluded that a compelling natural force had caused the deaths. Numerous theories have been put forward to account for the unexplained deaths, including animal attacks, hypothermia, avalanche, katabatic winds, in some infrasound induced panic. So like a hallucination kind of a thing,
Right.
military involvement, or some other combination of these. But some have even called into question military testing of energy-based weapons. Also aliens, Yetis, and a whole host of other possibilities as well. That's a real kind of Cliff Notes version of it, but it's a really interesting story if you look into it. It makes no sense as to why they died. Like an experienced group of hikers. If it was an animal, I mean, it would have had to be a pack of wolves or something. There's 9 people there, So I'd say maybe it's one we can look into at some other episode, but it's very good.
I believe
very interesting, rather.
I believe Gordo has an episode of the Dyatlov Pass, does he?
I think he does actually. I think he does. Yeah, it's an older conspiracy guys one. Yeah.
So yes, if you want to check out a podcast, listen to Gordo's. I'm sure his is probably more geared towards like psyops or something, but like it's probably fairly comprehensive, I'd imagine. And we will probably do our own Dyatlov Pass episode, but. Yeah, it's very good reading for people that are interested. It's a true story. It involves, a lot of speculation from different countries trying to figure out what happened. And they don't really have answers. They reckon that it's like some type of sound emitted by like a vortex, like a wind type of thing that made this pitch that vibrated the hairs inside your eardrums and made you go crazy. That's what they reckon.
Yeah, which made them maybe attack each other, or it's really just a very, very strange, very, very strange story. I think there's a movie called Dyatlov as well, which is like a found footage. I think it turns out to be aliens at the end of that one, but also not great, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Did you see with the Dyatlov Pass as well that one of them had is that in the notes there that they had really high radiation levels? Did you put that down? No, it's not there, is it?
No, but it's true. Yeah, that's part of the story.
As part of the story, and also the really weird thing is that the lad that was responsible for the Chernobyl meltdown was called Dyatlov as well.
Fuck.
So yeah, there's all this like radiation, 4D chess, conspiracy, Chernobyl. You've got all this crazy stuff going on with the Dyatlov Pass. It's literally got everything, right? And you could put any spin that you want on it. So for us, I suppose, we're trying to tie it into a Yeti involvement. Which, look, there's the shattered skulls, there's the chewed up fucking bits and bobs. There's definitely some, I mean, it looks like maybe animal, maybe cannibalistic behavior. I don't know. Like, what you reckon?
Wendigo. You think the Wendigo was up in there?
Yeah, the Wendigo could have been there, yeah. Very strange thing. But do you reckon the Yeti was responsible for the Dyatlov Pass?
I don't know. I think something weird happened up there. So I'd settle for Yeti, aliens, sort of Wendigos, anything that was kind of fun, I'd be into that.
Yeah,
of course, I also think it's awful that these people died and blah blah blah, blah. But if I had to choose,
it's awful, blah blah blah. Yeti.
Yeah, Yeti, I think. Yeah.
So, well, it probably wasn't the Yeti. And another great question that you've put down here is, who would win in a fight, the Yeti or the Bigfoot? Who do you think would win in a fight?
Well, I think you have to think first about where they're fighting. They're fighting in the snow, Yeti, it's home ground.
Neutral
I think
turf.
If the Yeti... Okay, neutral turf. So kind of not as hard as not as warm as the forest in summer, not as cold as the mountains in winter.
Yeah, let's say like the tundra. Is that kind of a mix of the two, or is that is it tundra? One of them is like kind of not fully frozen. I don't know, maybe it's not tundra.
Yeah, let's leave them there. I think I think it's probably going to be an even match. I think they'll probably have to have a best of 3 matches, Yeti versus Bigfoot 3, and then they'll draw on points. Is what I'd go for. I think they're pretty evenly matched. What do you think?
I would go with Yeti in any scenario. I think if he's like the Russian or like the mountain Asian, he's going to fuck up Bigfoot. Bigfoot is soft. He's all in America. He's fucking eating McDonald's and fucking Burger King out of skips in fucking people's houses and shit. He's diving into wheelie bins and his diet is trash. He's probably picking up dime bags of meth from fucking lads in the woods. So he's a fucking wreck. Yeti is in, you know, the mountains. He's eating goats. He's chasing fucking goats for 4 weeks. All you have to do is look at the polar bear versus the regular bear. Polar bear fucks them up. So, you know.
Yeah.
The frozen, don't fuck with the frozen counterpart. They're always miserable and they just want to kill you. They have no time for any of your little soft bullshit. I think Yeti would really fuck Sasquatch up. I think he would think twice.
Yeah. You could be right. You'd
probably get fucking cheeky.
I'll ask you the last. He could. I'm gonna ask you the last question.
Oh, okay.
Would you rather give Yeti a hand job, or would you rather get a hand job from Bigfoot?
I sent this to a few people. I was like, "This is what I have to deal with notes. This is the questions that are posed to me." Would I rather give the Yeti a hand job or get a hand job from Bigfoot? You'd have to get a hand job, wouldn't you, from Bigfoot? Really, like.
I think that's going to be the last time you feel a hand on your dick, because he will. Bigfoot giving you a hand job? I doubt he's going to be gentle. I'd say that dick would be gone.
What about a Bigfoot foot job?
I know, man. I'd say the power in his legs, like he'd probably crush your pelvis with his heel. You know, that'd scare me. No, I think I'm taking a big Yeti load. I think that's what I'm doing in the situation. I'm just gonna be like, all right. And I'm just gonna hope that he doesn't get too aggressive with me. But I don't think your dick is surviving a hand job from Bigfoot, man. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. Yeah, I can tell that you put thought into that thing. So,
I always do. Every night before I go to sleep, I'll just sit there and I'm like, if I'm ever in a situation like another one might be, do you ride on the back of Loch Ness in the lake?
Right.
You know? Or so that's one option. So would you rather do that, or would you rather the chupacabra chasing you when you're in a Humvee, in the desert?
I'd rather the chupacabra.
Yeah, because I think you're going to drown with Loch Ness. So I agree with you on that one.
It's taking the deep waters, and Loch Ness is cold as fuck, man. It's not a pleasant little place for the old swimming. So. To really summarize, what do you think about the Yeti, man? What do you reckon? What's the verdict?
I think that both the Yeti and Bigfoot and the other names we saw from them for the different kind of folkloric traditions, I think they're all possible. I think sometimes I wonder about, like, is it sort of a tulpa, which is like a being created of everyone thinking about it. So you see the Yeti, but it's not. It might be you create that image, same as UFOs and stuff. Because there's lots of stuff about, like, remember I talked about the Bigfoot with the lantern earlier.
Yeah.
There's other stories about the will-o'-the-wisps in the forest, which are the lights.
Yeah.
But they are seen around places where you see UFO activity and you see Bigfoot activity and all this kind of strange stuff. And I think we talked about it in our Shadow People episode. We touched on this with the jinn, and that it was just it was a way of describing all of the spirit world.
Right.
So I don't fully know. I think it's like Schrodinger's cat. It's like it's both real and not real at the same time, if that makes sense. We just can't open the box to look inside, so they exist in two forms almost. Yeah.
I reckon something like that existed for sure. I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility. Like, I mean, obviously, you would have to believe that surely there would be fossil record of something like this. But those regions are very fucking wild. Like, I mean, you're talking about places where even now, if people died or left there, it's not. These are very inhospitable regions. Like, we're not talking about. We should stress that to the listeners. Like, the areas that Yetis are being seen in are completely fucking unforgiving, incredibly harsh places that not many people go to. They're very desolate, hard to live in, and like the likes of the Nepalese and all are some of the toughest people there are. They're tough motherfuckers, like, because their areas are so unforgiving and harsh. So Is that probably one of the least researched areas in the world? Absolutely. Is the snow and all that and the mountains probably not very well mapped? Probably not as well mapped as you would imagine. Absolutely. Is it possible that something had a very small amount of numbers, or like we said, maybe there was some type of inbred bears or some type of weird? Yeah, yeah. Do I think Yeti is the thing that we see in pictures that looks like fucking Harry and the Hendersons, except he's white? No, like I maybe I don't think it's that, but do I think it could be some type of undiscovered animal? Yeah, I say so. I think so.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Yeah, I always want to, you always, I suppose the fun is in the mystery. If they ever actually did discover any of these things, we might be like, okay, that's just a thing now, But yeah, I'm a big fan of Bigfoot and the Yeti, so I just wish them both love, and I hope that they're going to have a really nice rest of their day. And I hope that someday they can both just hang out together, because they seem like the yin to a yang. You know what I mean? Seem like they would complete each other, and I'd like them to be happy.
I think the Yeti might be our first sort of flagship tentpole cryptid. He's like the biggest one that we've covered, I think, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, historically, yeah, definitely the biggest. Obviously, Bigfoot's probably the granddaddy of them all. I think Wendigo is like an up and comer. I think
Wendigo's Wendigo. Up there. Yeah, he's close enough. Mothman, I suppose, is a fairly big cryptid, right?
That's true. To be fair, yeah, Mothman has like a statue.
Yeah.
In Point Pleasant. Yeah. So yeah, I think Mothman's up there as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe someday we might sort of do callbacks and re-record these episodes when you and me are in the same room at some point, when the pandemic is kind of settled down a bit. But because I guess
Monster Fuzz Studios, so
Oh,
yeah,
big day.
We'll be able to do that. But yeah, no, it's a possibility when you're with any of these type of cryptids, like you're saying. It is possible that we will go back to them, simply because our format is ever evolving. Sure, this is only like, I don't even know what episode this will be, but it's not that many. So obviously, as the format grows and our notes, even in the style that we write our notes, has changed. I mean, it all evolves. Even this episode, this is an older episode notes wise. This was supposed to be episode 7. And it'll probably end up being like double that episode, maybe 14 more. Probably it'll be like episode 16, 17. So in that space of time, our notes have evolved completely. So yeah, I think Mothman will probably, at the very least, definitely be revisited. I think, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And especially the more kind of we can get sort of people's own reports of it and stuff, any stories, it would be cool to revisit and do that. We have a deep well. You've got ghosts, you've got so many things to look at with this kind of a thing.
Yeah. So watch the space for all that, folks. Do you have anything else that you would like to add, Eamon, before we close out the Yeti?
No, just look, if you've made it this far, appreciate you taking the time to listen to it. And to get in touch with us, let us know if there's anything you'd like to hear about. We can research it and put an episode together.
Yeah. I second that motion. So Monster Fuzz Podcast on everything, guys, as usual, monsterfuzzpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send out any messages on Facebook, there's the Monster Fuzz Facebook. You've probably seen us posting in encrypted groups if you're listening. So we be out here. We're easy to get a hold of, so if you do have anything like that, do let us know. And I think that's about it from the Yeti. Probably our biggest cryptid as of Yeti. And that's about it from me. And
that's about it from me too. Thanks very much for listening, guys.
Yeah. Cheers, folks. Bye-bye.